It's not surprising though, because the personal stories, as sometimes difficult it is to go there for us, those are the things that people relate to.
You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 413. And today, I hope you'll do a little cheer with me because email marketing isn't dead. And our guest is going to show us how to transform your email list into a thriving community. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, expert entrepreneurs and ripple makers. Is Melanie Benson, Authority Amplifier, and today we're talking about email marketing. So you've followed me a while, you know I have had my twists and turns, my ups and downs. It's been a roller coaster ride for me these last few years with email marketing, and hey, I didn't give up on it, although I wanted to. And what I did instead is I really dialed in and leaned into some better strategies, some better technology around email. And one of the people I absolutely love what she does around email, I've invited to join us today to talk about what she's doing differently and how she's really helped people revive their email communities. So I'm excited to share her with you. And one of the things that people ask me all the time is like, okay, Melanie, like I've got down what to do when people get on my email list. What do I do to get people on my email list? There's a lot of things that we do here, but let me focus on one that I find works over and over and over again, and that's being a guest on other people's podcasts. Now, just being a guest isn't going to get the leads to come on your email list. You have to have a strategy. I teach that in Authority Accelerator, but you can also get a kickstart on this using my Authority framework. Now, there are 7 key pieces that you kind of got to have in place if you want to make a bigger impact, if you want to be a ripple maker, and if you want your ripple making machine to be able to reach more people. That means leads in your email list. That means people interested in working with you. And that also means you getting those coveted invitations to speak, to be interviewed, and to collaborate. You want to know how it works? Head over right now to melaniebenson.com/framework. It's a completely free download, but what I would recommend is go through it as if you're assessing how strong each of those elements are and see where do you need to optimize so your business can start to grow the impact and the reach in the next 3 months. Now, let me bring my guest up because you're going to love this episode today. Welcome back, Amplifiers. I'm so excited to share today's guest with you because we're talking about why email marketing is not dead. So my guest today is Danielle Weil, and she is a copy and marketing strategist, the creator of a launch flow who helps expert business owners build fun, profitable, and sustainable launch engine. Since 2006, she's written dozens of 6 and 7 figure launches, generated over 170 million plus in sales for clients, and mentored business owners to break their own sales records while launching in a way that creates flow and momentum. Danielle, thanks for being here today. And I'm really jazzed about this because you have a unique lens into campaigning and launches and actually, like using email to sell more of whatever our offers are. And while so many people are avoiding email, you're really leaning into it. So welcome. And I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So let's just talk about like the elephant in the room, so to speak, or the elephant in the podcast room. And this is this idea of email marketing. And why do you see it not being dead, but actually a very valuable asset for someone who's going to want to sell more to their community?
Yeah, first of all, I think people bring up this like such and such is dead, launches are dead, email marketing is dead. And it's a fun, like catchphrase, controversial thing to say. Um, but it's really, really not true. Email is still the number one driver of sales for most people's launches right now. Like you will convert more sales and make more money from email than any other channel, because it's a place that people still have to check. Like important stuff still comes to your email. And so people are still checking email. Has it changed? Has the way that we have to think about how we email and who we email and how often we email and what's in those emails, has that changed? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Like we can talk about it. But the fact is, email marketing as a channel, uh, it is the cockroach of marketing.
The cockroach of marketing. I've never heard that said before. That's awesome. And
I didn't actually come up with it, but I heard it and I thought it was very, very true.
I'm not even going to unpack that, but it stands for itself. And I just want to second this. And I know a lot of my clients over the years, they are just so mixed up about email. Maybe they are not, that's not, doesn't feel like their superpower, which is where your resources come in so handy. And I think a lot of people miss the boat because they don't email their community either at all or enough to really like have success in their launch. Now, as you were speaking, it occurred to me we should probably just define what do you mean by a launch in case some of our friends that are tuning in today are not familiar with this terminology.
Sure. So a launch is a time-based marketing promotion. It's something that has a beginning and an end. Your offer is available, and then it is not available. And in the meantime, you are letting everybody know that it is available. So that's what we mean when we talk about a launch. You can It's not necessarily launching an offer for the first time, although it can be. It's anytime you open the doors to that specific program.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for defining that. So I'm going to pepper you with some questions that I know come up all the time for people around writing emails, using emails to their list. And I'm sure you get these all the time. But let's start with how do you know what to write in your emails?
The short answer is whatever you want. The long answer is you are building a relationship with your list. These are people that, you call it a list, but your list is made up of individual human beings that you are building a relationship with. You're just communicating with them in a way that technology makes it more efficient. So, what do we write? Well, you can tell stories about your life. You can um, be as personal or impersonal as you want. What I like to advise people to do is have each email have a takeaway and think before you write what the goal of the email is. Often you can even jot it down before you write it. What is the goal? What is the takeaway you want people to have? And what is the feeling that you want them to have as they're reading that email? So, how do you know what to write? Um, you set those goals. What's the takeaway? Where are you sending people? How do you want them to feel about it? And if it's during a launch, then that there's a specific sequence of emails that sort of pulls them into that and through that launch. And if you're not currently launching anything, then it can be whatever you want, honestly, as long as there's a takeaway and somewhere to click.
Hmm. I feel like you just dropped a really big golden nugget for us, and that if you're not launching anything right now, what should you write? And I think that presupposes that everybody listening in knows you need to be emailing your list all the time and not just when you're going to launch something. What are your thoughts on
Yes.
that?
So that's right. And thank you for pointing that out and sort of separating that because I take it for granted, right? Like you should be emailing your list. We can talk about how much and how frequent, but you should be emailing your list regularly, right? It shouldn't be like, hey, I need something now. Hi guys. It's me. I haven't written you for a long time, but I'm here and I'm selling this thing. I get it. And if you haven't mailed your list for a while, don't start with that line. Just tell them a great story.
Mm.
Like it is okay if you haven't mailed your list for a while to pick up at any point and start mailing them. But when you do, commit to once a week, once a
I,
week newsletter.
I love that you said that, Danielle, because And I think we're going to solve some of this stuckness in today's conversation, because I think what happens is they don't know what to send out, right? And so they don't send anything out. They have like this writer's block, or I think what you call blank page syndrome, which we'll talk about in a
Mhm.
minute. You just kind of opened this door, so let's walk through it. You said, well, we can talk about, can you email your list too much, or what is the right frequency? So yeah, I'm with you at least once a week. I think there's a nurturing and a conversation that we're creating that people get used to hearing from us. I know it's a habit. If you're listening in, you're going, once a week, no way, Melanie and Danielle, that's never going to happen. I want you to ask yourself why. What's keeping you from keeping that conversation going with them, right? So you definitely want to lean into some of Danielle's resources here, because she's got so many valuable tools that would help you with this. But can you email your list too much, Danielle?
Potentially. And the thing that, like, maybe we've experienced where somebody is in the middle of a launch, it's the last day, and you get email after email after email after email from them. Last one, I promise. And you're like, okay, no, I'm really frustrated now. I'm not interested. Um, I'm not going to say don't do that ever. There are more efficient ways to use your email software to send to people who are interested. So, as you're thinking, how many emails should I send? General rule of thumb is one more than you are comfortable with. Um, but practically speaking, you can send only to people who have clicked on earlier emails in a sequence, or raised their hand, or gotten to your sales page. Like, you could think about specific audiences based on the behavior that they've taken, and send more emails to those people. So you might have one or two that go to everybody, and then to people who have interacted in a more deeper way, you can send more emails to them. And in fact, you should.
Yeah, it's a great advice. We tried something in my last campaign that might be a little too complicated for people who aren't regular emailing, but we told people, hey, if you don't want to hear about this campaign, click here. And we moved them off of our main email list. And we had very few people opt out. I was pretty surprised. I was like, cool, that worked. So, yes, you said you
Yeah.
can use your software more intelligently, more intentionally to navigate some of that.
Yes, definitely a best practice. We call it a campaign specific opt out. So
Mm,
you can put it at the bottom. Hey, don't want to hear any more about this specific thing. Cool. We'll take you off the list, and you'll still get the rest of our great stuff. Yeah, that's
yeah.
definitely another tool that you can use.
Great, great wisdom. Okay, let's talk about the person who sits down to write the email. And if I have some people I'm coaching who they tell me they do this. So I'm talking to you right now. This is your question I'm channeling for you. What do you do when you get that blank page syndrome going, where it's like, I don't know what to write? So you don't just like click away, walk away, and never get the email out.
So the goal is to never write from scratch. And I have my clients tell me that they hear my voice in their head saying this to them, never write from scratch, when they sit down to write. So, what does that mean? It's easier to edit something, it's easier to, um, and you actually have probably a ton of things that you can draw from. So, what I will do sometimes is I will take an email that I really liked that someone else has sent for inspiration, and I'll maybe use the first line and tweak it, or I'll use the idea and spin off of it. Basically, you want to get something in that doc so that you're not writing from scratch. The other thing that you can do is the thing that we talked about before, the GTF, the goal, takeaway, feeling. Start with those. Start writing those down before you even start writing, so that you know where you're going. So start with someone else's work. Start with the goal, thought, feeling. Start with a piece of content that you've sent already. Um, Start by answering a question that someone in your audience has asked. Start by writing your emails as a voice note, right? If have someone ask you a question, and if you are not a writer, then you can just talk into whatever voice dictation software will get it out of you, and then edit from there. And so there are a lot of ways to hack that blank page syndrome. The goal is never start from scratch, never write from scratch. Don't do it.
That's great advice. That is my worst enemy. It's like trying to get the inspiration out of thin air. It's like, yeah, it's not coming. So I do many of those tools. One funny little thing that I started doing many years ago is I used to channel a question or a chat or like a frustration or block that would have come out of a coaching session. And that
Hmm.
always was another way that I could access some inspiration if I was really stuck for something. I do that in my social media too. So that's kind of adding on to what you said there. But yeah, it's I love this. I think if you follow email marketing at all, you know that the holy grail of email marketing is engagement, right? Like we want to get people to take an action of some kind. So being as you're like the expert in this area, what are some tips you could share with us that would help our Amplify community really start to get better engagement with what they're sending out in their emails?
Sure. So, first of all, let's define engagement. Do we want someone, and that's when we talk about deciding the goal first before you write. Do you want someone to click to your sales page? Do you want someone to click to your blog? Do you want someone to book a call with you? Do you want someone to hit reply and just give you an answer and engage with you and comment? Like, what is it specifically that you want them to do? And then once you decide what that action is, there always should be one, by the way. There always should be a place to click in your email, rule of thumb. Um, then you decide, well, how do I get someone's attention? How do I maybe create a little controversy? Not really, but how do I talk about something that is not what they're expecting or used to hearing from me? How do I create a pattern interrupt and be like, "Ooh, here's a goldfish. Let's talk about that." Or call them pattern interrupts, right? Something that someone is not necessarily expecting or used to seeing. It's like, look, a squirrel. And working those into your email in tasteful ways, telling a wacky story, talking about something unusual can get people paying attention. And then they get invested. And then you ask, hey, hit reply and let me know. Or go here and do this thing. Um, Build momentum, storytelling at the end of the day.
Yes, storytelling all day long. I track all this. I'm kind of a stats geek, and I noticed that the ones where we tell a short but compelling story get much better engagement than ones that are much longer. As a fact, I test them on my weekly newsletter versus my just solo emails that we send out, and it's really interesting how the stories that are more personal to me or are super relevant to my audience get the best engagement. It's just been really fascinating to see what people respond to these days. Are you noticing a theme with your emails as well, like what people are responding to more than other?
It's not surprising though, because the personal stories, as sometimes difficult it is to go there for us,
Hmm.
those are the things that people relate to. Am I seeing trends? Um, Shorter emails, people are maybe not getting to the bottom of longer emails. Sometimes you want to try to have a link higher up as opposed to just one at the bottom. Um, the thing about email, the thing about people in general, right, is like if we are used to seeing something similar, like if our header is the same every time, if our format is the same every time, then people go, "Oh, I've seen that before. Have I read that before? That looks really familiar." And so another way to create engagement can be mix it up, change your header sometime, have shorter emails versus longer emails, use different formatting, have a little call out box at the top. So this is not necessarily copy tips per se or writing, but different ways to just as someone opens their email before they even read a word, they instantly know, oh, this is different. What's this?
What's your take on emojis?
Test them, use them sparingly, depends on the audience. Same thing with images, because images can potentially ding your deliverability and like slow down the emails. But on the other hand, they create engagement. So try to aim for like one image per email.
Mm. Yeah, we've tested that too. I haven't seen anything definitive, but we've noticed that as well. Well, we're talking a little bit about metrics. Let's just go a little deeper into metrics. And I think, and maybe you've seen this as well, the guidance I've been given is that the metrics that we used to look at, which is open rates, are not necessarily the definitive metric of what's working. And I'm just kind of curious, what are you seeing in metrics that we should be looking at to know how well our emails are creating engagement with our community?
Well, like as you mentioned, since the Apple iOS updates, open rates are kind of just big guesses. Like your email service provider is guessing at what your open rate is. So if you have historical data over time, you could potentially plot trends, but it's not reliable. So the thing that we're looking for is clicks, which means there should always be a place to click in your email. Otherwise, how will you know? You will not know. And so you want to measure uh, click rates as both, percentage of sends and basically as a percentage of total sends, because that will be the reliable metric of how many people clicked and did the thing that you wanted them to do. Also, think the other thing that you want to pay attention to, but not too much attention, is unsubscribes. Right? If an email caused a ton of unsubscribes, you may want to pay attention to that because you don't want that metric to get too high. But really, everything in email these days is driving for that click and getting the click.
Yeah. I I have seen a lot of changes in what a good click through is and what good open rate is. If somebody's trying to figure out, like, is this a good open rate? Like, I don't know, or not open rate, but a click through rate. Like, how do I know if what we're doing is working or could be better? What do you see a standard click through rate right now that is a good measure of success?
It's gonna depend on, I know everyone wants to know, like, this is the number and this is it. It really does depend on the size of your list, how your list has performed in the past. Um, it really is relative. So if a year ago your click rate was 3% and now it's 1%, um, that's a significant drop, right? If you are still sort of holding steady at 3%, probably doing pretty good. If it's dropped below 1%, if you have a larger list, that would be, to me, concerning. Like I'd want
Mhm.
to, if it came out of nowhere, go, okay, well, what's happening here?
And Danielle, I love that you're bringing this into the conversation today. And so, as you're listening in, I think that's really important for us to identify, like, what to diagnose as the problem. And it isn't always what you're writing. Yes, we want to create engaging emails and we want to really learn from amazing experts, which is why I invited Danielle here today. And you need to make sure your technology is working. And we learned a really painful lesson a few years ago that our technology was not set up right and we were bleeding leads. So, really make sure that you've got your technology, your DMARC settings, all of that fancy stuff set up right so that you really understand, like, what does my audience want to hear from me? And we can measure the right things. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Danielle.
Definitely. Like I had an experience with a client who had seen a dip in deliverability, and we were trying to figure out why, and essentially they brought in deliverability expert, and you would be surprised how much is not related to the actual words that you are writing.
Yep.
Sometimes it's something in your subject line that's flagging. Sometimes it's just the way that your server is set up, right? Like, so it can be maybe a little overwhelming to think about, but do uh, talk to a deliverability expert if you see a significant dip, because it's not, like you said, always connected to the words,
Yeah. Could just literally be a technology glitch. So
which is
hooray.
comforting because then easy to fix, right?
Right, exactly. But catch it quickly. So be mindful of your metrics. They are a very valuable lens into what's working, what's not working. So you're fixing the right problem. Really, that's the bottom
Right.
line.
And I don't know if you do this. Do you have sort of an ongoing spreadsheet where you're tracking email metrics?
Oh, yes.
Um,
Yes.
right. Every email, like
Yes.
opens for what it's worth, clicks, unsubscribes. So if you are not doing that, now is a great time to start because that data over time will be really, really valuable, not just for metrics, but for knowing which emails performed. And then you can go back and optimize them.
Yes. And that's how we caught the problem, actually.
Mhm.
So You mentioned something earlier about subject lines, and I just want to say from my own personal experience, your subject lines will make or break everything else, right? It is a really important piece of the making sure your subject lines are not spam triggers, but it's also what intrigues somebody to open. And you have a resource that is phenomenal around this. Would you be willing to share where everybody could get a copy of one of your tools on writing good subject lines?
Absolutely. So, yes, I have put together 30 of my favorite subject line shortcuts. Um, they're fallen into 5 different categories, so you can sort of riff on them, take them, use them. You can get them at dwcopy.com/subject lines.
Yeah, and we'll link that up in the show notes for you all in case you're scrambling for a pen. And so there's a couple of ways I would suggest using a tool like this that Danielle's gifting to you today. First of all, like it can be a great way to start an email with a subject line that you get excited about, right? So a subject line can be a great spark and test them. Like try different versions of them to see. Like sometimes we'll repurpose the email, but try a new subject line and notice what gets the better open and click through. So, but just having high performing subject lines, different, a copywriter's brain to access to say, oh my gosh, what subject lines are working right now? It's a great starting point to help you get better engagement with your emails.
Can I give you a bonus shortcut that you
Ooh,
can do right
yes.
now for subject lines and emails in general? Is I have a completely separate Gmail address that I only check when I need inspiration. And I subscribe to all kinds of people's lists in all different industries, people who I know write good emails, and they all go there. And when I need inspiration, when I'm writing a sequence that is 5 bajillion emails and I need lots of subject lines, I go in and I see of the 7,000 unread emails, which ones I want to open. Like which ones pop to me, and I star those. I'll just go through the first 2, 3, 4 pages, star, 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 star. I want to open these guys. And those are the subject lines that I will use because they caught my attention in the natural setting that people are seeing the emails that you're writing as well in a crowded inbox. So if you don't already have a swipe email set up, highly recommend it. And then just on the principle, don't write from scratch, go get inspired.
Yes. And I want to be really clear. Danielle said the word inspired by, not copy and swipe, right? So it's not a
Correct.
swipe and deploy
Get
method.
inspired by. No,
Yes.
it's not, I'm going to copy that subject line. It is, I
Yes.
am going to play with it and make it my own.
Yes. Yeah. And I have a tool I use where I go and test the rating or the ranking, I should say, of a subject line. Do you use anything like that?
Like a headline tester,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, not usually.
Mm. Well, if it's okay with you, I will share what again, it was shared with me. It's something we use to test a subject line. So go learn from Danielle, get it all like dialed in with the right resources. And then if you want to have a way to kind of run it through like what gets a higher score, you can use it. I'll drop it in the show notes for you guys under resources. But it's a free tool, super handy. It's just another way to really say, how well might this perform for my message and my audience?
Great way to check.
Yeah. So I have a couple fun questions for you that I always like to ask my guests before we wrap up. And I just feel like we've gotten to learn about your wisdom and your superpower, but I think people like to hear about you and learn a little bit more about the person behind the business. What would you say is the boldest thing you've ever done that ended up amplifying the success of your business?
The boldest thing that I've ever done. Well, have gotten on planes on a whim, flown 15 hours with a toddler in tow by myself to attend events that I thought would, oh, this event looks really good. This event looks really fun. They're not long flights. They're, not fun to do with kids, but definitely being in the right rooms with the right people and having the courage to do it with a baby, with kids at home, with the long flight, with everything. It's easy to say, no, that's a lot of work. But picking up and going to be in those rooms, I think, has um, transformed both the way that I look at business and relationships, and also made really concrete connections um, that have made things happen for me.
I would second that. And I thank you, Danielle. I needed to hear that today because I'm on the fence about going to an event that I've been invited to. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be like, I'm going to have to blow a lot of things up to make this work. And saying yes to those rooms, that's where movement happens. So beautiful wisdom. Last question. As you're looking back over the trajectory of your business from today, is there one thing that you wish you would have done sooner? Because now you're like, oh, that had such a big impact on my business.
This is going to sound a little strange, since we just spent time talking about email, but I would have started building my own list sooner.
Mm.
I have written, I don't know, tens of thousands of emails for clients, and my own list is frankly not where I'd like it to be. So, I wish that I had focused on it sooner, and that's definitely where I'm focusing now.
I love
Go write
that
those emails, people.
yes, I love that you shared that. And again, it's about being in front of the right places and doing the right things that inspire people to come in. And I got to tell you, my friends, Danielle's a really exquisite writer. She writes amazing stuff. So, for no better reason than just to learn from a pro, you definitely want to get her resource and get on her email list. But I think sometimes we forget to do the things we know to do for others for ourselves. And I just love that you were willing to share that. Thank you. So go build your email lists, amplifiers. As a matter of fact, as you're listening in, what's the one thing that we have inspired you to do differently today around your email? I want to hear from you. I'm sure Danielle would love to hear this too. Tag us in the social media that's your favorite about this podcast episode. Tell us what you got inspired to do with your email from today. Danielle, thank you so much for bringing your time and your talent and your wisdom to the Amplify community today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. We're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.